my name is Grace Monahan. Welcome to my presentation. I decided to do my presentation on the differential responses of cryptic bat species to the urban landscape. To break that down, basically, urban landscapes that we keep evolving in rural areas are basically evicting species, such as the bats that we're focusing on today. Now, before I really begin this presentation, I'd like to start with understanding what urbanization is. So, what is urbanization? So, urbanization is defined from the Oxford Dictionary as the process of making an area more urban, which I think is not the best definition because it's pretty vague. Also, in ecology and evolutionary sciences, we focus on how urban areas or urbanization affects habitats. It plays such a large role on habitats because of how much it limits the resources these animals have. So, now what does that mean? Urbanization is a process where there's an increase in number of people that live in an urban area that usually results in physical growth of urban areas. So it's just an increasing cycle of urbanization. There are differential responses to the new increasing urban landscapes. Urban people can change their environments, especially when the population is steadily increasing. They do this through their varying conceptions of food, energy, water, and land use. And we're focusing today on urban landscapes because they are different to those of rural populations. Urban populations are more likely to consume more food, energy, and durable goods than rural populations. Usually, when you think about urban environments, you think about cities and busy populations frequenting an area. But today, we're going to talk about how urbanization can affect the neighboring environments and the environments they build off of, particularly the environment of the cryptic bat species. Throughout many studies, urbanization is linked to population declines of varying species, even in widespread and common species. Initially, it's kind of hard to imagine how bat species can be affected by human urbanization, since we don't really share a lot of the same resources as bats. But, surprisingly, we learned from this article that the majority of species are negatively impacted from urbanization. With the use of data from the National Bat Monitoring Program, we are able to dive into the responses that European bat species have to the urban landscapes increasing around their homes. Two urban landscapes focused on throughout this study were classified into certain types of environments, also known as biotopes. One source of land in this study was greater in urban landscapes with a higher density of rivers and lakes, while the other was described as having a high proportion of green space and parklands. The results gained from studying these two landscapes and their effects on the bats shows how even species that are considered to be well adapted to the urban landscapes can respond negatively to the built environment. It leads us to believe that maintaining biodiversity will become increasingly harder to do, considering that the increasingly urbanized world we are developing. Now, these are the bats we're looking at today. The Pipistrellus bat, but for now we're going to call him the pip bat. On the bottom, we have the Pygmaeus bat, but we're going to also shorten this one and call it a pig bat. Both of them are very similar species of bats, and that's why they're focused on in this study. Since they're in two different environments, it's good to have a control. We proceeded to examine the results from the gathered data of these two species living in the environments. We focused on this study the probability of recording the pig bats relative to the pip bats. Now, as you can see in these charts, I'll move the picture again. As you can see in these charts, there's a higher rate of running into these bats or seeing these bats or recording these bats when there's fresh water nearby, and there's a lesser chance when there's a percentage of green space. So the water area is one of those landscapes that we looked at earlier, is a better habitat, as we can tell, because the populations increase there rather than the percentage of green space. These models indicate differential responses between the species to landscape characteristics. There are similar variables that influence both species, which I left out because they're not statistically significant when viewing these models. The results indicated that the land masses with fewer rivers or lakes had a 95% probability of recording the pig bats, whereas the pit bats are more likely to be located in areas with a higher proportion of fresh water. Both species were equally likely to be recorded in urban areas with lower levels of greenery in the surrounding area. The pig species were also recorded to be more likely to live in landscapes surrounding woodland areas. The European bat populations are slowly recovering. Increasing urbanization has caused an increase in pollution, more specifically water pollution. Since we can see from the study that bat species survive better in landscapes with fresh water, pollution can cause these species to suffer significantly. Some species vary in their adaptability levels, especially when adjusting to urban environments. The pit bat species, as well adapted to the urban landscapes as it is, these results indicated that even one of the most adaptable European bat species may not be able to tolerate these highly urbanized locations. Common species like these types of bats play a significant role in the structure of their ecosystems. Throughout the study, we see that species that were known to be well adapted to the ecosystem related disturbances are still significantly negatively affected by urbanization. Fortunately, after the historical decline of bat populations around 1988, these species have stabilized. For now. I say for now because they only stabilized alongside the increase of legal protection and raised awareness of bat conservation. This can still change because our world is continuously urbanizing. One major solution discussed at the end of this article is spreading awareness of water pollution, as well as the call for increasing proportions of conservation funds to be spent on the environmental improvement programs. These programs can focus a conservation effort on our common or species such as the pig and pitbacks discussed today. These programs help the species by creating effective urban green space schemes. By ensuring these common species remain with urban landscapes helps build opportunities for public encounters with more encounters with the wildlife, more people may be influenced toward conservations and taking part in making a change. I'd like to end with my favorite part of this whole article. The conflict of interest section reads, "None declared." That means we can still make a difference. So thank you for listening to my presentation, and here are my cited sources.